I'm Maddie, aka M-Dog.
And I'm Todd, aka Toddles.
I'm Nick, aka Moron.
And our topic is self-check. So the description of self-check is it's developing independent practice of a memory task and engaging in self-assessment that is guided by established criteria. In the self-check style, you would see the teacher selecting the memory, subject matter task, and designing the criteria, example, performance checklist, for the students. The students individually practice the task and check their own performance using the checklist. The teacher privately communicates with the students to listen to their self-assessment comments and either reinforces the learner's use of the criteria or redirects the learner's focus to specific performance details on the criteria.
Oh, well, yeah, you can go to your second.
Okay, so moving on to subject matter objectives. One objective for self-check is learners assess themselves in comparison to criteria sheets established by the teacher. Examples include individual skills, target games, fitness results, etc. Another subject matter objective is teachers provides feedback at the end of class. Also, to develop kinesthetic awareness in physical performance by individually practicing and assessing performance. Also, to gain independence in performing the task and to practice the sequence intrinsic to assessment and feedback skills. To be able to correct errors in one task performance and to increase activity time on task. And lastly, to master the content leading to automatic performance. Now moving on to Toddles for behavior objectives.
All right. The behavior objectives for self-check of Mosstons spectrum of teaching styles would be to become less dependent on the teacher or a partner and to begin relying on oneself for feedback and acquisition of content. To use criteria to verify one's performance would be another one. A third one would be to maintain honesty about one's performance. A fourth one, to cope with one's own limitations. Number 5, to gain self-awareness about one's proficiency in performance. Number 6, to develop independence and personal motivation. Number 7, to develop feedback skills to adopt an intrinsic motivation capacity. Number 7, to continue the individualizing process by making the decisions shifted to the learner in the impact and post-impact set. And the last one, to learn social manners. And now, to discuss implications, or the advantages and disadvantages of the self-check Mosstons teaching style. Some simple advantages would include that students get to monitor themselves. This would give them ownership or allow them to invest more in their physical fitness or in their physical education. And this also requires less teacher attention. So that would be better for larger class sizes, where a teacher's not going to be able to give one-on-one instruction to every student. Another advantage would be that self-check is private. Some students may be reluctant to share their physical ability levels with others. Third advantage would be that students learn their own limits, successes, and failures. More concerned with the results of a movement and not the movement itself would be another advantage. So relying more on quantitative and not qualitative results. So being physically active rather than stressing too much criteria on how to be physically active would be an example that we came up with. In a more specific softball unit, would it be more important that a student is throwing a softball with perfect form or just that they're able to throw a softball and complete the task? One last advantage would be that it is appropriate for students who may require transitional services, such as students who might hopefully be using future community YMCAs. Some disadvantages of the self-check Mosstons teaching style is that, the same as the advantage, students monitor themselves. So honesty could always be an issue. Also, self-check being private, and both an advantage and a disadvantage. We thought it would be a disadvantage because some students may thrive on that spotlight or their peer and teacher attention. Also, without teachers' or the instructor's direct attention, students may slack off. Another disadvantage is that it is more concerned with the results of a movement and not the movement itself. At what age is proper form going to be stressed, rather than just being able to perform a task? One last disadvantage would be that students learn their own limits, successes, and failures, just like an advantage. We thought this would be a disadvantage for it may cause student frustration. And now, Nick is going to give us some examples.
Hello. So, some examples. Earlier we talked about applying it to a softball unit, and obviously in grades in primary grades K through 2 and intermediate grades 3 through 5, we're not going to have them play full-sided games of softball. However, we will implement some perspectives that you would use in softball, such as throwing and catching and batting off a tee or batting off a soft pitch, so they can later on apply those skills into small-sided gameplay. So I'm going to give some examples about how you can, as a teacher, apply the self-check teaching style with these different grade levels. Now, one example that we talked about is in a K through 2 setting where your emphasis is more on throwing and catching. You can explain to students what their expectations are, and you can demonstrate the throw and catch if you want, and you can also even give them pictures to show that have sequences in them of the progressions of throwing overhand, such as the step, point, throw, and then you can have them give themselves a thumb up if they were able to throw and catch with a partner for a certain amount of trials, or a thumb down if they weren't able to do it for a certain amount of trials, such as 3. Then in a third through 5th grade setting, students can continue to use the thumbs up, thumbs down method on themselves to assess if they meet certain criteria if you want to apply the underlying criteria of skill execution into your lesson, or you can just continue with if they actually did the skill and threw, say, for distance, so you have students give themselves a thumb up if they were able to throw and play catch with each other from a distance of over 10 feet, thumbs down if they weren't able to play catch from a distance of 10 feet. Then when you get into the 6th through 8th grade setting, you can have an informal checklist, and you can even apply pictures to the different skill criteria so they have a visual while they're performing the activity, and they can check off whether they met the certain criteria that's on your checklist, or if they have not, so then they can start to practice actually assessing themselves on paper. And then after you move on into the 9 through 12 setting, you can discuss completing a rubric with them, and then you can apply it to small-sided game settings, so they fill out some type of rubric and explain and assess themselves on if they were able to apply different strategies in a small-sided softball game, such as they give themselves a score on how well they felt they executed stealing second, or just stealing in general, or if they felt they were competent in applying the sacrifice bunt method in a small-sized softball game to advance their team into better scoring position, and just other strategy type concepts within that rubric, so that way they can assess themselves and really reflect and just think about if they were able to meet, if they are competent in meeting what the educator is looking for. So moving forward from that, we have a list of resources that you can implement if you want to learn more about this teaching style, you can find some information at users.rowan.edu-connect/elementary-p-Mosstons teaching styles, or you can go to www.spectrumofteachingstyles.org and then just search Moston styles, or you can go to www.spectrumofteachingstyles.org and then just a dash styles quick guide and find some information. And you can look it up on YouTube, and you can watch this teaching style actually take place in actual lesson settings with various units if you want to get an actual visual of this taking place. So, thanks for watching.